Are we on? Yeah, we're on. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unleashed with Brian Collins. It's been wow. It's been 3 weeks. Yes, it's been 3 weeks. We decided on a every other week schedule just to accommodate us with other things. And we're back. And the last time we were together, we talked about doubt, what it is. We looked at examples of doubt. I think we agreed that because we're human, we doubt. That's what we do. One of the things we do. And so we looked at that, and we just thought that this really deserved a part two, because one question is, what is doubt? But the next question, the one we're going to talk about today, is dealing with doubt. How do you deal with it? So we're going to drill down a little bit on that and get to it. But first, I am your host, Greg Lal, and he is Brian Collins, and our intrepid producer, Chris Judson, is here. Chris, do you have a podcast voice, or is it just me?
I think that might just be you.
Yeah. Well, I just heard it. Yeah. So, with my best podcast voice, I'm going to throw it over to Chris Judson to roll the music. I am happy. Oh, that's right. Oh, and that's even different than he moved it this morning. It's kind of like a bobblehead thing going on. Unless we hear some sort of ramping up here, this is going to be pretty. Okay. Maybe that's just it. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. All right, Brian. I wanted to begin, if I could, with a quote from the man we both know. Well, we don't know him other than what he's written, but we love him, don't we, John Calvin? Don't we love John Calvin? Yes. And here is something he said. It doesn't sound terribly profound, but it really, I think, is spot on when it comes to doubt. He says, "Surely we cannot imagine any certainty that is not tinged with doubt, or any assurance that is not assailed by some anxiety." So we kind of agreed on that last time we talked about doubt. It's a human thing. It's part of being human. So we've already agreed too, and you correct me if you disagree, but we already agreed, I think, that doubt is a slippery slope to sin, not necessarily sin in itself. But today's question is, how can we deal with it, either to avoid it or work through it, just deal with it. So, kick us off with something.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that I'm gonna necessarily go in the direction that you want me to. So I mean, broadly speaking, what you are talking about is what we call Christian formation. That is the discipline or the practice.
All right, hold on.
Or the praxis.
I've never ever used that phrase, so we don't talk about it. What do you mean when you talk about it?
Oh, you don't use the word Christian formation.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe the. I mean, it is true that in my church growing up, we didn't use the word, but that's what we're talking about. I have friends with friends who are on staff with InterVarsity, and they have what they call spiritual formation.
Mhm.
And then I have friends at Gordon Conwell who are part of the Anglican group, and they have, I don't remember exactly, but it's got the word formation in it as
Yeah.
well. And so anyway, the idea is that like it's not really a divide, but you have theology, which you can think of as sort of the intellectual, but how do we practice this? And so how do these truths make a difference? And so again, it's not really a divide. It's only a divide because of our Western way of doing things. And so one thing we forget when when Jesus said, "Follow me," he literally meant follow him on foot, sandals and all. And he wandered from place to place. And so you had people who wanted to follow him, at least in principle, and Jesus knew that like the cost of discipleship was too high. So you had the rich young ruler who wanted to follow Jesus. He said, "Well, go sell all you have, and then you or like." Let me go bury my father. Well, let the spiritually dead bury their own dead. So anyway, so the point is that Jesus walked everywhere, up literally up and down, and Judea and up north. So and was literally dusty, literally camping most of the time. And so there's not just I intellectually acknowledge these truths, but I'm literally following Jesus around and watching the way that he lives and that he interacts. And so again, with our Western thinking, everything is kind of boxed away. So I'm trying to answer the question in the spirit in which I think it's put.
You already started to answer it by saying what you just said, which is that we should take that, at least in part, literally. Follow me. Do the hard work of watching Jesus the way we would follow anybody in our lives, and begin to imitate. Whereas we've tended to what would be the verb? We tend to treat it as a metaphor. Following Jesus means, intellectual assent and believing and those kind of things, which involve disciplines and everything. But I like what you said.
Yeah. So So anyway, I don't know the history of the word or the idea of spiritual formation. It would be a good thing for me to research, but anyway, like I said, that this is under the category of like I said, of spiritual formation. And so we need books. I can't remember his first name, but his name was Foster. And he wrote a book on defending some of the classic Christian discipline, including especially
spiritual disciplines. Yeah,
is that what it's called?
yeah.
Spiritual
He was,
disciplines.
a monk, wasn't he? Foster.
Like I said, I don't remember
Yeah.
anything about the man personally, but he's defending sort of some of the classic practices that the church has followed, and some of which have fallen out of the church, but yet are part of our health movement, which I find extremely ironic. And so, like, fasting was, if we trace it in terms of an institution, I don't know about the secular world, but as far as the Jews go, they were to fast 1 or 2 times a year, and then there was certain they would call it spiritualizations of I'll fast once a week to show that I'm better, and then you get the you get this I can't remember if it's part of one of Jesus's parables or if it's part of, and that man is saying, well, I fast 2 or 3 times a week. And so you can see how, like, you're only supposed to, I think they had to fast for the high holy feast of Passover. And so they maybe it was for one of each of the holy weeks, they're supposed to fast a day or whatever. But then, then it's, well, I'm going to fast once a week. Oh, I'm going to fast twice a week to show how much better I am, and so there's always these temptations for spiritual pride. And that's not really where I wanted to go. But there are, Jesus himself fasted, so he sort of led the way. And then similarly, he says when you fast, and so in other words, it ought to be part of the Christian life. And so historically, the church has always done some kind of fast during Lent, and actually the Muslims fasting and not drinking during the daytime during Ramadan actually comes from the Eastern Christians who lived in the desert, and they would not eat or drink in the middle of the desert. I don't know when, I assume during Lent, but the Muslims found that kind of devotion compelling, and so they continued that practice. I'm a little bit off topic here.
Well, just while you're off topic, Richard Foster
Richard
was his
Foster,
name, and I remember that book from a long time ago, Celebration of Discipline. I mean, he'd written
Celebration
others.
of Discipline.
And
Yeah.
real quick, here are the disciplines, his list. Inward disciplines, meditation, prayer, fasting, study. Outward disciplines, simplicity, solitude, submission, and service. And then the corporate disciplines of confession, worship, guidance, and celebration.
Yeah, so I've read that book in community probably 2 or 3 different times. Once in a small group, and then probably once in either a different small group or a Bible study. Sadly, have not instituted them long term, but at least I'm familiar with the material, and did practice some of them while at least reading the book, and found it beneficial. Anyway, yeah, I mean, really, where I wanted to go, and maybe that's that's not necessary that we go there, but this morning, Greg and Chris and I all attend Durham Evangelical, and Tim Hafner preached, and it was out of Luke 5, the middle section, and it's about Jesus's healings, and so one of them was a leper, and the leper in the Lukean account says, if you will, and it's hard to communicate the weight in English because we say I will or he will as a future tense, but in Greek they have a separate future tense, and so like if you desire, I was thinking about how to translate it differently. It's a derivative of theo for sure, and it's like he's saying, I know you are able. I'm paraphrasing what the leper is saying to Jesus. He says, I know you're able to heal me, but do you want to? And Jesus responds, I will, or I want to, and then does the unthinkable, which Tim spent a long time talking about, of that, like Jesus touched the leper, and instead of Jesus becoming unclean, the leper becomes clean. And I don't want to get into a digression about the holiness code, other than to say that this, in my mind, is connected with the problem of pain, of like in other words, that like we have, that those of us that are Bible believing Christians, we have it axiomatic that God is powerful enough to do certain things for us. But then the question is always, well, does he want to? And then so then there's sort of troubles in the details. And so Luke also chooses to put as a second vignette right after, and I'm not sure about the chronology. But anyway, as far as this Lukean chronology goes, we have the man, Jesus is in a house, and we have a paralyzed man and his friends dig through the roof and lower the paralyzed man down through the roof. And then Jesus makes this extraordinary claim. And Tim didn't cover all aspects of it, but, Jesus said and again, I don't necessarily want to answer some of the questions that can be posed because it says when Jesus saw their faith, and it doesn't necessarily exclude the faith of the paralyzed man. He says, "Son, your sins are forgiven." And then Jesus perceiving their thoughts, and I believe it's in all the synoptics. And Tim mentioned that in the Markian account, perceiving their evil thoughts, said, which, he asked the teachers and the scribes and the lawyers, and et cetera. He said, which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or get up and walk? And so obviously, like, it's easy to say the words, anyone can say anything, but the authority that Jesus has, like if Jesus says it and your sins are forgiven, that obviously is a much greater thing. And so I wish I remembered the logical thing that Nick was talking about, a posterior fortiori or something. It's something like if you show the weaker claim by proving the stronger claim. And so again, I my Latin's not very good. So he talks about, his son Jack, who's who's a Marine now, and my son Jack can run 8 miles. And Nick can say that with confidence because his son Jack has run 12 miles. And so similarly here, Jesus is using this kind of argumentation of like proving, it's actually not this, but anyway, Jesus says, obviously anyone can say your sins are forgiven, right? Say the words, but to say it with authority, like only God can do that. And strictly speaking, that's not, that's an evolution in the doctrine of the Pharisees, because originally the statement was only the priest can say your sins are forgiven. And of course, by extension, only God can say that. But that was, at least in some of the books that I've read, that the writers have pointed out that it's only the priest that can say you're forgiven or you're clean. And so that's so if we go back to the man with leprosy, it's important that Jesus makes this man fully reintegrated into society. And so, like, do the proper sacrifices, get reintegrated into society, become whole.
You've been unleashed for long enough. I'm just going to ask you to bring us back to you had begun all of this by saying where you really wanted to go with this is. So how does this relate to
Sure.
doubt
So
and-
yeah. So for me, with my depression, with certain desires that I have that I feel that I was promised growing up in the church, and not by God but by people, and coming to terms with that. And so we're sorting out, okay, God, you're able, you haven't. Is that a lack of faith on my part? And there's anecdotal evidence of saints either way. And so I don't know her story very well, but I think she pronounces her name Johnny Erickson
Yeah.
Tata. And she, if she's still alive, she must be in her 80s.
She is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if you don't know the story, this young lady, when she was 17, she dove into shallow water and was paralyzed, became a quadriplegic. And she was a Christian before, but she is now alive. She's done a lot of fantastic things in the 60 odd years. Or however, I think it was in 67 when, so that would make it 40 if the dates are right. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
No, I think you're. Yeah.
It doesn't
It's
matter
close
how
to
old
60,
she
right?
is or isn't. But one of the neat things is she learned how to draw and maybe paint with just her mouth. And there was a movie made that I watched as a young teenager, and she entered an art competition, and her friend wanted them to tell you, oh, you did this with mouth. And she said, no, I want to enter it, without any, and just then I'll know if I'm actually any good. And I think she actually won. Again, that part's not that important. And then later, she founded a ministry called Johnny and Friends, and I'm not exactly sure what they do, but it's helping people with disabilities.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sure, most certainly, she started it before other things like the Special Olympics, and so anyway, the real reason that I wanted to bring this up, and John Piper, he may or may not know her personally, but this is John Piper telling her story about when she gets to heaven, and she says she wants the wheelchair for just a little bit. And do you know the story?
No.
Yeah. So she's gonna say to God, that thing there caused a lot of trouble, but I'd rather have it and know you than not have it and not know you. And so again, that at least is sort of the gist of it. And so the question is, would Johnny been able to do the things that she did, were she not,
Had she been healed?
yeah, had she been healed? We're not told the answer to that question.
That's a great example, Johnny. And Tim, this morning in the sermon that you're referencing, said, there is a world of struggle. I think he used the word struggle between you're able to do this, oh God, and you will to do it. And yeah,
So yeah, we come up against, and again, I personally put, even though she's much less known, I put Johnny right up there with a Mother Teresa of like most certainly a saint, like one of the most happy, joyful people. Yeah, and obviously I don't know her at all. This is all anecdotal. But from what I've heard and other people talk about her, just knows Christ in a way that most of us will not ever know this side. And so again, we don't know what is behind the will of God. And God God can use evil for good. And obviously, like Augustine, made up, a distinction. It's just that, like, as far as us and our obedience, it's obviously best that we do good, the good simpliciter, than it is that we do evil, and then God use the complex good that will come out of that, right? And so, like, Joseph's brothers did evil in sending him to Egypt, and we should never say that that wasn't evil, but God used that for good, and Joseph himself, acknowledges that and forgave his brothers, and so I don't know. Again, my Latin's not very good, so I don't know if it would be called good complexiter, but anyway, so like I said, it would always be, as far as we're concerned, it would always be better that we do good. But, like, and no one should say that it wasn't unevil that Johnny was paralyzed from the neck down, but God, obviously made something good, much greater out of it.
You cannot doubt what God had in mind through her life after all of these years, what he planned.
Sure. Sure, but the one thing I do want to point out is that in the movie, and the movie was probably made in the 80s, like, the medicine just wasn't there, and so she would be laid down on this mat for hours and hours, face down. I think she could see, but she couldn't do anything, and the nurses would just leave her for hours and hours, and so she would beg, or she apparently, because it made it into the movie, so apparently she begged one of her friends to kill her, and her friend said, "No, I can't do that." And so again, I don't. So that's really part of the other reason why I brought up Johnny's story, is because this is someone who, like, most certainly had doubts, and most certainly suffered a lot of pain.
And doesn't her story and the story of Joseph, two good examples, doesn't that kind of legitimize doubt?
Well, I mean, that's my whole point is simply to say that, like, sometimes things are more complicated than we as humans can comprehend, and as someone who's gone through pain, like, I'm not paralyzed, obviously, but gone through pain and gone through seasons where there's hope in death. I remember talking with people about that years ago, about that suicide is the hope in death, instead of hope in Jesus. So it's hope in a lie. That we never got that far, but that's the sort of. And again, I don't want to dismiss that because I've been there. But anyway, the point is I have been there. So I personally know what that's like, and it comes and goes, and so right now I'm fine. But anyway, you look at Job, and you say, both he and his friends, and I may have said it before, I'm going to say it again. I don't care. Both he and his friends have this simplistic theology of, if you do good, God will bless you. If you do evil, God will punish you. God is punishing you, therefore you must have done something wrong. And so, which obvious, like, in terms of propositional logic, that is, what we're talking about is the contrapositive, and so that's not, it doesn't follow at all, because if you do good, God will bless you. Like, the reverse of that is I'm trying to think of how to negate that. Well, it's not an or statement. Anyway, the point, I don't know, it probably is a good exercise for me to do, like, that's equivalent to you not doing good or God blessing you. And so the negation of that
This is the way the sausage is made.
is
It may not be the most entertaining thing, but it's happening right now in real time.
God will bless you. And you I'm sorry. I'm so trained on a piece of paper. So, and probably most of you don't care. So, like I said, the negation of, or the opposite of, or the contrapositive, which is the logical equivalent is, don't do good and God will not bless you, or
Yeah,
God.
that's right. Don't do good.
No,
And God will
no,
not bless you.
No, that's not the opposite. It's if you're not blessed, you won't. I'm
That's
I'm
right.
all confused. I'm all confused. I'm sorry.
That's right. Let me take a turn while you pull yourself together.
I need pen and paper in front of me.
We have a producer for that.
Wow.
All right. I want to throw out these two. I don't even know what you call them. Two different sentences. And I want you to react to these. Tie this in. Doubt is often a path to faith. So in the stories that you shared of Johnny and Joseph and Job, I think you could say that there was a lot of doubt in there to begin with, but over time God worked faith. The opposite is it really isn't the opposite, but faith is often the path away from doubt. And the story in the scripture that I talked to you about this morning, Brian, that to me illustrates that second truth, that faith is often the path away from doubt, is Genesis 22 and Abraham. And I'll just mention the one thing I mentioned to you this morning and then let you take it from there. I am amazed as I've been studying that story of Abraham commanded to offer his only son Isaac as a sacrifice. As I've been working through that story, I'm amazed that from the beginning to the end and everything in the middle, there is no evidence ever that I can see that Abraham ever once doubted or hesitated or wanted some sort of a workaround to what God had commanded. He simply, by faith, obeyed, and he put everything in place to accomplish the thing that God wanted him to accomplish. It's the next best thing to paper.
Well,
it's an iPad.
Yeah, well,
It's an iPad. You know that, right?
what's wrong with you?
Yeah. But you can take either one. You can use the iPad and work this through, or you can.
I'm not gonna. I'll work it
All
through
right.
later.
Could we talk about the Abraham, because I'm
Yeah. So
fascinated
yeah.
by
So
that
anyway,
story.
so like I said, I mean, we've talked about Job before. We can circle back. I was reflecting on all these stories. They have names, and I don't remember the Hebrew word to bind, but both Hebrew and by extension Christian scholars call this passage the binding of Isaac, and so that's what it's called. Interestingly, the I'm sorry, I was just going to say Mohammedans. Muslims say that.
Is that the older
Let's see,
and
older
less,
academic way. The reason it fell out of favor is because it supposedly implies that, by analogy, that since Christians worship Jesus, that Muslims worship Muhammad, which is not true at all. Plenty of people follow certain people without worshiping them as deified. But anyway, that's that. So we took their word for it, which it comes from a word that means to be whole or peace, and so the Hebrew equivalent is shalom. And then you add a suffix, and so it means something like the faithful ones, or those that are whole. Anyway, and Islam also comes from that same root. So anyway, extreme digression on that point. And so anyway, because again, I've not read the Quran, but they claim descent through Ishmael, his first son through Hagar, and so the Muslims wrongly. I mean, we have to be clear here. Wrongly say that Abraham was going to sacrifice Ishmael instead of Isaac. But anyway, so the binding of Isaac, we studied this in my Hebrew 2 course. So it's part 1, part 2. So my Hebrew 1 second semester class. One of the things that, again, my own ignorance and realizing of how much my ideas about things is shaped by artwork. And so in most of the artwork, Isaac is a child. But when you and I remember poor Phil Lewis, like I came down on him hard. Oh, he was saying that Isaac was older, and at the time I was ignorant. And I'm like, it says young man, and then when you look into these things, you realize that the word na'ar, which means young man, can mean servant or boy of any age. So Abraham's servant, presumably Eliezer of Damascus, was an old man, and he's called a Na'ar. So anyway, so the point is that like in art, Isaac is always a young boy, but probably he was not a young boy. Probably he was a full-grown adult, and really the reason we can say this with any confidence is because they left the donkey behind, and the amount of wood it takes to consume a human being is, pretty sizable amount of wood. And Abraham was 99 when Isaac was born, so he wasn't carrying a lot of wood. So anyway, and also in connection with the it being an archetype or typologically Christ, Isaac's carrying his own cross, as it were. So anyway, so like I said, I know art has him being a child, but he probably wasn't. And so Isaac, in a way, was also being obedient to his father. And Sarah, it seems, also knew what was going to happen. So I don't know. There's different ways to read the story, especially on what kind of lens you want to put on it. And modern, well, maybe not so modern, but critics will say of both this story, the binding of Isaac, and of the crucifixion, that it was divine child abuse. And so it's like out of all the charges to level against God, I don't know of one more blasphemous. And so, you might as well take it head on and see, why it is or isn't that. And like I said, if Isaac was, a young man, then he certainly could have overpowered his father. So he himself was complicit, and it's a little bit different if
complicit.
Or
in
not
a good
not,
way.
Well, yeah, not complicit, but acquiescent.
Well, yeah. At the least, like you earlier said, he was as obedient, as Abraham was, his father.
Yeah. And so like the other thing, and Greg and I talked about this passage this morning. One of the things that I said is and I don't remember what book it was. I have lots of books. I suspect it was Jesus Through Middle Eastern Eyes, but it could have been Walking in the Dust of Rabbi Jesus. I mean, it doesn't matter. Some book somewhere, and it said that like the way that Oriental or Eastern cultures think, and most cultures for all time, because again, we have so many systems. There's nothing particularly wrong with them, but systems like Social Security that like in the in the A&E, the ancient Near East, like they didn't have Social Security. So it was the responsibility of the children, particularly the male children, to take care of their parents when they got old. And so that's why there's all this, from our perspective, fuss about there's got to be a male heir to take care of the widows, and why, for example, like if the wife, if the husband dies, the brother of the husband is to go impregnate the wife to raise up seed. Like, again, like we should just see that as weird and gross, but that's not really what it's about. It's about preserving the line so that the people will be provided for. And so the whole point is that the people didn't see, we as especially Americans, and I don't know about Westerners in general, we have a certain idea about what success means. And the success, which I include myself, is, I, get a degree and then get a job and then all these things. And then retire and play golf and live comfortably. That's what we view success as. But that's not really the way that most of the world views success. It's that your future is in your family. And so, like, if your children die, you, in a sense, die. And if you, so what's, I don't think I explained this correctly, but what God is asking Abraham to do is not so much sacrifice his son as he is sacrifice your future, Abraham.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but you talked about how you view this through what filter. The plain reading of this story by a Westerner, by a parent, including this parent, and now a grandparent, is I take this story and I put it in a box over here as one that I will never, ever tell to my young child or my young grandchild until they're old enough to wrap their head around it, because it is, on the face of it, it is absolutely horrific that God would command a man to sacrifice his son, his only son. And the only way to talk about it with kids, if you talk about it at all, is to talk about the typology and say, this is what Christ did for us, which is true. But
yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer your question.
Well, that is
well,
a question.
No.
It's an observation.
Well, yeah, right.
That,
I guess
it is
I guess,
horrific on its face if you read it through the filter of a Westerner. I sent you a link to a Desiring God article, and this is written not by John Piper, but by I think it's John Bloom.
His people.
Yeah, well, he's co-founder with John Piper of Desiring God.
Oh, okay. I've never heard of Bloom.
Let me read this quote, then I'll throw it back to you. He says, he's talking about reading it from the mindset that Abraham would have heard it from God. He says, nearly everyone in this region believed their gods sometimes required human sacrifices to prove worshippers' devotion or to grant some great request. Through God's disturbing command to Abraham, one Abraham would have culturally recognized, God was orchestrating an abrupt and dramatic sacrificial paradigm change. The God of the Hebrews. Now, he's jumping to the end of the story where, Abraham has the knife over his son, and the angel says, "No, don't stop." He says, God was orchestrating an abrupt and dramatic sacrificial paradigm change. The God of the Hebrews does not require his worshipers to sacrifice their children, but provides for them substitutionary sacrifices acceptable to him, which later obviously would be codified in the law of Moses and the whole law, and ultimately in Christ. So
yeah,
that's the way to
mean,
understand it.
Like I said, you opened up a whole can of worms of like,
you're unleashed. Go for it.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know. Maybe I should have been prepared to think about the objections to this story. And like I said, it's crude. It's crude to put it in the terms that I said a few minutes ago about it being spiritual child abuse. But I mean, again, you might as well face the strongest objection. So it certainly is true that the A&E, the ancient Near East, sacrificed children. We've done archaeology, and the Phoenicians, who were a little bit north of Israel, especially Tyre and Sidon, and they were seafarers, and they traveled all over the place. They sacrificed a lot of people, both captives and their own children, and so you. So I watched a video recently on sort of the. It's crude to put it this way, but the economics of child sacrifice, and I mean, up until, 100 years ago, I mean, infant mortality was like 50%, and so if you think about, you go to a cemetery in America, and there's all these little graves, and so. Even if your child survives infancy, what's the probability that they make to adulthood? It's like 30%. So again, if that's the calculus, when you're married, when you're a young teenager, you're 20, and you got 20 years, so you got 20 shots at this. Again, it's horrible to put it in these terms, but this is the calculus that the people are doing. If you can sacrifice one of them and then get 19 more, well, then you're doing pretty well. You know what I mean? So, like I said, it's not. So that we got this weird god that. Molech, which is you take the letters that mean king, and then you add different letters to it, and so it's probably there's artwork of it being a bull, and then it having its hands out, and there's anecdotal evidence about you would have a fire under it, and you would put the baby on it, and it would burn to death, and so it's obviously horrible. But we haven't found any archaeological evidence of such thing in Palestine. But the Phoenicians were also in North Africa, and so they became the Punics, Hannibal, in the Second Punic War with the elephants and whatnot. Though the Carthaginians was their city. We do have actual graves of infants, so there is archaeologic evidence of children being ritually sacrificed, and so there certainly is record of it in the Bible. But for certain peoples, that's not good enough, and it's only if the archaeology proves it. And so as of yet, from what I understand, we've not found. Again, I could be corrected on that, but as I understand it, we've not found archaeological evidence of child sacrifice in the Levant. So the coast, the land along the Eastern Mediterranean. But certainly there's anecdotal evidence, and then we certainly the like I said, Moloch, and then Chemosh, I believe also, and the Israelites were most certainly forbidden not to do this.
Wait, it's a double negative. They were forbidden.
Well, no, I was saying I got my words mixed up. The Israelites were doing this because I'm going to get but the Valley of Hinnom, where they burned the trash for generations, they also had these things called tophets, and we don't really know what a tophet is, but the Phoenicians, speaking the same language, also had these tophets in North Africa, and we find little bodies of infants next to these tophets. So anyway, you find this word tophet in the Bible, and so it has something to do with child sacrifice. And the more I'm thinking about this, the more disgusted I'm getting. Um, and So anyway, so Abraham is certainly pre-law, and pre-Moses. I mean, all these things. Like the word Israel doesn't even exist because that's like that's Isaac's son. You know what I mean? So I don't know as much about Mesopotamian or Egyptian sacrifice. So Abraham comes out of, if we understand the Bible correctly, Ur of the Chaldees, meaning which is near Babylon, which is in modern Iraq, near Baghdad. So
I just want to clarify too that this guy that wrote this article, he said he paused in words that I didn't read to say, I'm not suggesting that what's the phrase that one set of values is equivalent to another set of values in the ancient Near East equivalent to our cultural values or even the biblical cultural value. He said, I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that it wasn't horrific that child sacrifice is not horrific. He's just saying that Abraham would have totally understood what God was commanding him to do in the context that he was familiar with. And what what God was really doing was establishing a new set of values for sacrifice, not involving children, but involving blood in the law. And so
yeah. So like I said, I'm just not familiar off the top of my head with Mesopotamia, be it Babylonian or Assyrian blood sacrifice. Other than they did it, one of the things they did do was they would sacrifice sheep and then look at the sheep's liver, and so there's a whole vocabulary of what it was a form of prophecy, a future hepatopathy. I don't remember. Anyway, you looking at the liver. It's analogous to looking at the tea leaves, but it was looking at these sheep livers. So we're way off topic here. And again, I don't remember with the Egyptians either. And if we look at biblically, the first sacrificed animal was Abel, and Abel sacrificed the sheep, and then Noah re-sacrificed. So it's been there from day one, and one of the things that the Jews were to do is and we
were or weren't
were
to do
for Passover is they were to take a lamb. I don't know how old because lamb is ambiguous. It can mean up to 2 years old. I don't know if that's our vocabulary or their vocabulary. But anyway, they would take a lamb and it would physically live with them in the house, and the kids would take care of it for however many days, 8 days. And then they would kill it, and then they'd paint the door, with the blood, and we can call that Pascal. No, Pascal. Yeah, I don't know. My Hebrew bad at this moment.
Could we rewind just for a minute to the times pre-Moses, pre-law, to the story of Abraham? We talked about what must have been in God's mind in telling him to do that. Could you give evidence? I'm trying to remember what was in Abraham's mind and why perhaps he was.
Oh, sure.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So I mean, we don't have to guess because the author of Hebrews,
that's where it is,
tells us. Again, we believe that Scripture is inspired, and I don't know if the author of Hebrews is saying something original or if he's saying something that was believed by Christians or the rabbis. I just haven't tracked it down. But in either case, whatever the source, whether it's directly from the Holy Spirit or the rabbis had come to it a long time ago, says that Abraham believed that God would raise Isaac from the dead. So,
Now, because the writer of Hebrews doesn't go this far, but can we extrapolate that he believed that because of God's promise to him, and he held so tightly to the promise of God that he would become a great nation
through Isaac,
through Isaac.
not through Ishmael. Yeah, I don't know. I'd
Yeah.
never thought of it.
Maybe it's not.
Like I said, I'm sure somebody has thought about it and tracked it down. I'm just haven't.
Yeah.
So
Just
I'm just saying my what I do and don't know.
I can't wait to get, by the way, to a random outside of this whole discussion question that my wife posed to me this morning. So we'll end with that and let you take a shot at it. But we're close to the off ramp here, go ahead.
I don't know. I was I was talking to someone this morning who's a listener to the podcast. His name's Joel. Doesn't matter, but I was saying, what was I saying? That in the fields of study that I've chosen, that for every one question that I get answered, 3 more pop up. and maybe I've even said that from this podcast before, but I found it to be true. And so and so we talk about the Dunning. Oh, that was the context. He was talking about someone had showed him a graph, and I knew exactly what the graph was, and I even knew the name of it. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it's basically like, why do dumb people think they're smart? And I talked about it quite often. So for example.
Why do dumb people think they're smart?
Are you not familiar with this?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, so take something that I personally know nothing about, like basketball, and my pastor Joe, maybe Nick plays basketball as well, but Joe played basketball in college, and he coaches, and so he and I have talked about this, and I said, you most certainly forgotten more about basketball than I will ever know. And part of it, and so the basic idea is with the Dunning-Kruger effect is that when someone is new to the subject, they know what they know, and then they know, but they have no idea what they don't know definitionally, right? And so they know a little bit about, the fun. Well, when you're talking sports, you talk about the fundamentals. And so, the fundamentals of dribbling and passing and, shooting hoops. And so for a little kid learning that thing, you're still learning the fundamentals of that, but you don't know the broader kind of strategy. And so maybe I should switch to photography or something, or maybe I should switch to building, because I actually do know something about building. And so I've met people that they get started in building and they're really excited and they think they know a lot because they've been told to cut a board 1,000 times and they've gotten good at that, but they don't really have any context for anything outside of that. And so then when you present to them a new thing, you don't know what you don't know. And so as one develops in a skill, the scope. So again, if you picture, a box, let's say, 1/10 of the box, like, about half, or let's say 75% of the 1/10 of the field that you don't know. And so you feel you're pretty good, but in the next 2 or 3 years, your scope is going to expand enormously, and you're going to learn about so many more things that you don't know about, and your skill also does improve. And so you maybe now master of maybe triple or quadruple what you were before, but now your scope is so much smaller that you feel you only know 10% of the entire field. And so again, I'm not sketching the idea very well, but the Dunning-Kruger effect is like as you grow in a field, you learn what you don't know. So in other words, your blind spots are taken away, and it's hard to not know what you don't know, because by definition it's a
You don't
blind
know it.
spot. Yeah, you
Yeah.
don't know it. And so it's something I know nothing about photography. Your brother-in-law does, Suzanne's brother does photography, and I think he's been able to make a career.
My daughter-in-law, Elizabeth.
No.
Are you telling me?
Yes.
Well, go ahead.
Yes, I know Elizabeth also does photography.
My son doesn't.
I'm not talking about your son. I said your brother-in-law.
Corey? We could
Wrong
go offline with this.
generation. Your brother-in-law. Suzanne's brother.
Yes. He knows my family better than I do.
My goodness.
Daryl, go ahead.
What is wrong with you?
I told you. Listen, I explained to Brian and Chris that I enter this podcast today with massive brain fog, and now it's just coming out. I'm sure it wasn't evident before, but it is now. Go ahead.
You were on the wrong generation.
I know. It's like when I call, in a sermon, I call Corey
I don't know what you called him.
I call him my grandson.
Oh.
My grandson, Corey. And I could see people were looking around like, well, what's he talking about? Go ahead, Brian.
Anyway, I was doing work at
How
Greg's
did you
house.
know that, by the way?
I'll explain. I was doing work at Greg's house about this time a year ago, and what's his name?
Daryl.
Daryl had come over, I think, to give something to Gigi, but he also took pictures of the fox.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was asking him about photography, and it seems like he was able to make a good side business.
So is there any smooth way of getting myself out of this situation now?
No.
Not at all.
Not
Okay.
at all.
All right, go ahead.
Not at all. Elizabeth also made a side business out of photography.
Thank you.
But that wasn't.
That helps.
But
That
that
helps to
wasn't.
get me out of it.
But that wasn't what I was. Because again, Elizabeth, in my mind, your brother-in-law does photography for it. So, and Elizabeth may do photography for its own sake as well. But I think primarily it was for weddings. It was sort of a business.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit different in my mind that for
Gotcha.
doing it for its own sake. And again, I don't want to insult anybody, but I'm just
including me.
Well, I do want to insult you because I said your brother-in-law, and you went down a
All right,
generation.
we all know what I said. Okay, so I want to now. Speaking of my daughter, whose daughter is named Kinsley, whom you know, Kinsley is really super into gymnastics, and so I've run into the phrase
Along with her sister.
yeah. Oh, her yeah.
No, I mean
sister. Air quotes.
I mean Clara.
Oh, Clara. Yeah. Clara and her cousin Seth's my son's daughter, Soph. But I've
No,
run
but there was a question there. Is Kinsley into it because of Clara?
no.
She was on it.
No,
doing it
she
on her
just
own.
really took to it. So when you go through whatever exercise it is in gymnastics, you eventually land, and it's called doing it really well. It's called sticking the landing, right? You've heard that.
Yeah,
You're
my
familiar with
mom.
that.
My mom loves gymnastics, so she would watch the Olympic gymnastics on tape over and over and over.
Yeah. So I'm going to use that metaphor to bring us toward
I am
a close
bad
here.
at sticking the landing.
We're going to
Metaphorically.
that's why I'm going to help you, Brian. I'm going to help you stick the landing. So I have written down here 4 kind of conclusions. Now this has been a wide ranging. I love these kind of conversations. I love where you go with it. But here are 4 takeaways. These are my takeaways, not original to me, and you may not agree with them. So I'll let you comment on each one. 4 takeaways from this whole conversation about doubt and dealing with doubt. Number 1, sometimes we need to settle for the, quote, secret things, Deuteronomy 29:29. The things revealed belong to us, to our children forever, but the secret things belong to the Lord. Sometimes we just do not know what we do not know. Is that a fair takeaway when it comes to dealing with doubt?
Well, in my mind, it's just a different category because, like,
Yeah, but we don't know it. We don't know that it's
No, but
individual. God knows it.
well,
But we want to know. We want to have answers to things that are secret, even though we don't know that they're secret until we may learn that they are.
well, I guess I'll try to answer this in the way that the late great R.C. Sproul said, like when he's talking about the revealed will of God versus the concealed will of God, and so so he had a young man, and this may be it may have just been an example that he was giving, or it may have actually happened. And the young man comes to him and says, Dr. Sproul, like there's two young ladies, I'm being told to marry. Which one do I choose? Which one does God have for me? And he says, the prettier one.
Sproul said that?
Yeah. And what he meant is that, like, we do have some freedom in some things, and it may be, and again, like this, he talks about this example a little bit. It may have been that, like, he was interested in one, but his friends and family thought he should be interested in the other one. He's just like, well, I love my family, I trust them, and I'm not really interested in this other one. And so again, like I said, it was an example, but I've found it to be helpful over the years. Of, like, we do have a certain amount of leeway and freedom, in some of our choices. Meaning that, like, the completely sovereign will of God is going to happen with or without us, right? But God does, as Martin Luther would say, God does give us freedom to build, to milk cows and to build barns, So. And so, like, and the other thing is with marriage in particular, and I can only talk about this secondhand, but the idea of the one person, I recently learned this, is like that comes from Greco-Roman mythology, where two people are ripped apart, two souls are ripped apart at birth, and they spend their whole lives trying to come back together. But that's not because they've been separated, but that has no place in the Christian life of, like, because what our culture has done is that, like, if I no longer am happy or have the feelings of being in love, then it's my right and my duty to divorce this person and to go find the next person. And I find the irony of a famous pop star who I won't say her name, but she's famous for the breakup. And she's now with, a famous
Chris, do you want Brian to stop playing with his microphone or not?
a semi-famous footballer. And, I saw in a magazine where it says why she knows he's the one. And I just laughed to myself because she's had about 20 the ones. I also saw another one is like, the football guys, like, we've never had an argument. And it's, well, yeah, because you're worth $10 million and she's worth $1 billion. So I wouldn't argue with that either. Anyway, sorry, I had, it's a pet peeve of mine. It's much stronger than a pet peeve of mine about the attitude of, I have a right to be happy, by which we mean this very small prescribed sexual happiness. And it's based on a lie, but the truth is that when you get married, that person becomes the one, and you're both, so that both husband and wife are to submit to one another, and the husband is to lay down his life as Christ loved the church. And so, like, whether or not you still have the feelings of being in love, it doesn't mean that you cease to love that person and you choose the action.
Right. I'm going to take what you've just said and where you've just gone with this and I'm going to guess that you agree with this takeaway that sometimes we need to settle for things that are the secret things of God. Not only God, we have choices. Sometimes it's not the right way or the wrong way. Sometimes we have freedom to choose. And sometimes things are just known only to God. So there's a lot of room, it seems to me, for doubt.
But again, I don't. I think my whole contention is it's not doubt when God just doesn't reveal it.
Yeah, that's why I was saying there's plenty of room for doubt that is not sin, that is not a slippery slope even to sin. It's just unknown.
Well,
It's
that's
what we don't
I
know.
guess that's kind of what my whole point is that I wouldn't call it doubt then.
Right. Okay, I agree. All right. Number two.
I think I think the tricky thing is that when sometimes we and I personally have met them and they've done a lot of damage, is that they have a simplistic faith of like, well, if you pray, God will heal you, and then if you pray and then God doesn't heal you, and then they turn around and accuse you of not having faith. And to which I say, well, I don't have time for you type of people anymore because you're toxic, to use it, So because again, you're basing you have a very simplistic theology of which the Pharisees are part of, and you're completely discredit Jesus and his own ministry of like it's that old who sinned, this man or his parents, and Jesus is like neither.
Right.
And you're also discrediting Johnny Erickson's testimony, right? So
Why are you discrediting?
no, those people.
Why would they be discrediting her testimony?
Well, because presumably she prayed to get healed.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. Now, that said, I mean, it is also possible to be faithless and unbelieving in
For
prayer
sure,
and not to receive
no,
things.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm assuming that people are acting in good
All right.
faith,
Let's move
so-
on to a second one. Make the main, is again, as a takeaway for dealing with doubt, make the main things the main things.
Oh, that's
Please,
such a,
this is
that's
not
such
original.
a pastor
This
thing.
is not original, but it came from an article that I mentioned last time.
You pastors and your aphorisms.
This wasn't by, certainly it's not original, and it wasn't written by a pastor. It was written by somebody.
The
who wrote
main
an
thing
article.
about the main thing. That's the
Make
most pastor
the main
thing.
thing. Let me give you there's no context for this, so let me just explain what he meant. Make the main things the main things. In other words, too often we can get so interested and concerned about all of the things that are not core to our belief, things revealed, things that are true and known, so that we begin reaching beyond them, outside of them. It goes kind of back to the secret things that God hasn't revealed. So make the main things, in this case, the person of Christ, the Word of God, redemption, salvation, all of that. Make those the main things that will help to insulate us a bit from doubt. True? False?
That's just not what I've found true to be in practice. I mean, like, this is going to sound way off topic, but when I was growing up, and I've talked about this before, but growing up in the '90s, or post '90s, we had a culture where everything had to be spiritualized, everything had to be Christianized, and so especially in the realm of like music, and so. And now that I'm older, I can follow, the satanic panic and like, frankly, rock and roll was just better than the Gaithers in terms of musical style. Like, like I said, and so I feel bad for those people who didn't like the Gaithers, and like genuinely liked rock and roll and felt that like they weren't a good Christian because they liked rock and roll and didn't like the Gaithers, right? And so and nothing against the Gaithers. They obviously love Jesus, and I don't even know if they're still alive. But I personally don't like their style of music, and I do like Kansas, and Kansas, is an example of Christians. I believe they're a rock band, and then they became Christians, and then
You were right, by the way. This is really sounding off topic.
yeah. So anyway, so my point is that, like, I remember in my little study Bible that came out of this sort of thing, it was like, you got to listen to Christian music, and you can only listen to Christian music. And so the question becomes, like, if you were to take it to the logical conclusion, you couldn't even sing Happy Birthday, because that's not a Christian
By the
thing.
way, you're familiar with the Beatles version of Happy Birthday?
No.
Oh, Brian.
You can
gotta look it up.
You can bring your guitar
YouTube it. Oh
and
no, I
sing
couldn't,
it for
I couldn't
me.
play it. It rocks. But go ahead.
Anyway, the point I'm simply trying to say is that, like, as Martin Luther would say, the drunk falling off the horse is that we've gone so far in one direction that we just sort of, like, have to sanitize everything to make it holy, and the way out of depression for me is simply exploring the gifts and talents that God gave me. And so I don't know who said it. It's probably something someone like Rousseau would say, is that
Hey, excuse me just a minute. We're almost. By the way, Evie, my granddaughter, just had a birthday party yesterday. We played this. Here we go. Ready? It's your birthday. We're gonna have a good time. All right. I hope that helps to affirm what you were saying.
No, absolutely not.
No? Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Tried to. Go ahead. Do you remember where you were?
No, I absolutely do not.
You would trash the Gaithers. You threw them under the bus.
I did throw them under the bus.
Yep.
Oh, it was this 90s, like, let's live in a Christian
Kansas.
yeah, let's live in a Christian bubble, and, like, you're only holy if you only do Christian things. And our culture is properly lampooned it, but I still think that we have a hangover as a culture from it, and it. Like I said, I'm still. Oh, I know what it was. It was that, like, God has given us faculties to do what we will with them. Like, some things are explicitly prohibited, but other things, are not, right? And so, like, whether it was Rousseau who said this, I don't know who said it, but the proper study of man is man, and at first I said, yeah, that's true. But then, I didn't really realize what it meant. What it meant is the only acceptable fields are, sociology, anthropology, and I suppose theology. But,
Urology.
Wow.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. But as C.S. Lewis responds to it, the proper study for man is everything. And I think that's right. And so, in other words, my path out of depression, yes, it's focusing on God, but it's also just, focusing on everything else, and not getting tunnel vision.
Okay.
Of focusing. So the temptation for me is to focus on my problems and get tunnel vision towards that. So.
But I hear you saying that the opposite of that is true. If we're just focusing on, the small core of Christian theology, and we're ignoring all of the stuff that's going on around us, including our problems.
Well, sure,
Both are
but
true.
my point is that like coming out of the sort of sanitation of
Yeah.
the 90s,
Yep.
of like where everything, if you just listen to Christian music, your problems will go away. Like if you listen to Christian music, you won't drink, you won't have sex, you won't smoke cigarettes. And I think of all the things that were villainized that aren't even necessarily sins.
Yeah.
Yep. But building the fence around the fence kind of thing. And like, is music inherently sinful? No, absolutely not. But again, in building the fences around the fences, music itself became sinful. And you think of like, churches and some churches still don't have drums because, oh, well, that's rock and roll. You know what I mean?
I want to get to the last two because I really want to get to the random question my wife asked that you need to answer. So I'm just going to put you down as not buying that we make the main things the main things. Too simplistic.
Yeah.
Okay. Third, live according to the faith you have. I guess, in other words, rather than just seeing it as a struggle between doubt and faith, either or, you need to be aware and to grow and to nurture the faith that you have and make it greater.
Yeah, see, this is the one thing that I wish I had done a little homework. Even if you were to get it up, it's too long of a passage. But I was going to say Paul Bunyan, but that's not right. John Bunyan, Pilgrim's Progress. He has the story of little faith, and everything is specifically allegorized. But little faith, Jesus calls the coins a word, little faith. He actually puts the word few, olgos, and faith, pistis, together, and it says you of little faith. And he's sometimes scolding, but he's sometimes saying, having a little faith is better than no faith. And so this character, little faith, is physically robbed and beaten, and but he hangs on to his precious jewels, and he's able to keep them and present them when he gets to heaven. And the way Bunyan tells it is so much better. But that's what I think of. And so the point that I'm making, and I think Bunyan is making, is that we have what we have, and so not everybody has great faith. There's another character in part 2 that's called Greatheart. I don't know.
Yep.
And Greatheart is a mighty warrior, and he helps the pilgrims get there. And once they get to heaven, he actually goes back and helps others.
Mel Gibson stole that part of Bunyan's work to make the movie Braveheart.
That is not true at all.
Okay.
The go on Braveheart refers to another character from Scottish. It wasn't Wallace. It was.
Well, that's your opinion. I think he just stole it.
No, it's a real line from.
Okay, I gotta jump to the fourth one.
Correct me.
How
many of these do you have?
Here's my personal favorite. This is the last one. My personal favorite: doubt your doubts. Rather than doubting all of the things we don't know that haven't been revealed, rather than doubting whether God is in this or in that, look at your doubts and doubt them, or at least examine them, rather than trying to...
Yeah, I mean, like I said, experientially, like when I'm so overwhelmed by emotion, it's hard for me to do even that. So like I said, I when I'm having a good day, I'm having a good day, and I can't remember what it's like to have a bad day. And I don't know if those of you who, everybody, gets a skin knee or gets a cut or whatever. And, I personally have cracked ribs, and, they say that's, one of the worst things, and I experienced it, but the pain is sterile. Meaning that, like, I remember that it was painful, but I don't remember what it's like. Whereas emotional wounds, I'm back there, and I'm still feeling it today. So, but similarly, like with the depression and the darkness, is like when I'm not experiencing, I don't remember what it's like. and so, so I think I kind of agree, but I think that the difficulty for me is that like it's not so simple as just like, because one could go into sort of what Marcus Aurelius in the Meditations is who kind of fathered modern cognitive behavioral therapy is just think differently. Just change your thinking and you'll feel better. And like, I personally, that doesn't work for me, I guess.
Well, I don't think it works for many of us.
Well, yeah, but that's still what we use for counseling.
We're at the final random question came from my wife. Here it is. I'll try to frame it the best way I can. In Luke's gospel, not only in Luke's gospel, but in Luke's gospel, since that's what we were reading, the prayer in Gethsemane, Jesus' prayer in Gethsemane, you will remember that Jesus asked 3 of his friends to go with him to pray, Peter, James, and John, and they all fell asleep. And there's Jesus praying in the garden that we read about. We even have his prayer.
We have part of it.
How do we have... So here's the question.
We have part of it.
Here's the question. How did Luke know when 3 friends asleep who could not have told him the story?
This is so easy to answer.
Well, let's have it.
I mean, to me, this sounds like I'm waiting for the punchline.
No, I'm waiting for the answer.
Right. Well, it's just, maybe it's you. Maybe if Suzanne asked me, I would feel like I said, I've honestly been waiting for the punchline.
How could Luke have possibly
told
us what Jesus
waiting
was
for
praying
the punchline? And obviously,
when 3 men were asleep,
you're hamming it up.
Did Jesus take Luke aside before he wrote his gospel? Hey, by the way, I was in the garden. They fell asleep. I just want you to know. I want everybody else to know this is what I prayed.
All right, so I am going to ignore you and try
That's nothing new.
Well, and try and answer the question in good faith.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So
That's what we're looking
because I think Suzanne was asking it in good faith, and just like the way that Greg was presenting it, I honestly thought
you said you were going to ignore me. Now ignore me. Get to the answer.
Like I said, I sometimes people ask questions, and I don't like to be made a fool of, and so like it's the old like. You can trick people into responding to things, and so the schoolyard, what's under there, and then you say underwear, and that's sort of like what I'm waiting for here, because that
is no ulterior motive here.
You tell me that
conduit.
Well, yeah, and like
question.
I said, I can believe that Suzanne asked this in good faith, but like I said, I can't not
get to the answer.
I can't
Brian.
not believe that you're not just going to be like, ha ha.
I promise I won't.
Well, anyway, so the Garden of Gethsemane, like all things, like it's a vignette, and we don't know how long Jesus was there, and so like we have Jesus going over and waking them up, right? So like we don't know like how long he was there. He could have been there for hours. And so again, like what we have recorded is just a sample. And similarly, like the Sermon on the Mount, like if Jesus was preaching for multiple days, the Sermon on the Mount that we have recorded in Matthew doesn't take that long to say. I mean, it's what, three chapters? So you could say the whole thing in 20 minutes, but presumably he had a lot more teaching. And so as John says at the first ending of his gospel in John 20, I suppose that if all the books in all the world were recorded with the stories of Jesus, all the libraries of the world would not be able to hold. So like,
how could Luke have known?
I already answered that.
Answer it again. Short answer. Short. I know it's painful. Just work through it.
To me, this like feels like I'm insulting everybody in the audience.
Short answer.
I feel like I'm insulting everyone.
Okay, well, there's your answer, honey. I hope you're happy with it.
Yeah, so again, the answer is that, like, presumably the disciples were awake for parts of it.
Okay, here's this is not the gotcha part. I'm not gonna do that to you, but the spiritual answer is the one that first occurred to me, is that the scripture came about when holy men of God were carried along by the Holy Spirit. And so it is at least possible that this and many other things that the gospel writers wrote down, included in their gospels, were given directly through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's implicit in the whole thing.
Okay,
But I just, like I said, when you asked the question, I'm just waiting for the gotcha, and like,
Yeah, you didn't get it, did you? Hey, this may be a record, Chris. I don't know. You would know looking back. This may be the longest podcast we've had. I'm wondering if we can make this. If you can just trim it down, maybe trim out the last question, which was just no, because it could be a bonus section. We could monetize this, and you would have to pay. I don't know what would be a reasonable.
sorry. So, in Greg's incoherent ramblings just now, I do remember that our producer asked us to do something. So it's the kind of thing that I don't like doing, and I hate when other people do it. Well, I actually haven't done it yet.
What is this going to be?
But I understand when YouTubers do it because it works. And so in order to, like, so if you're older and you don't know how to do it, just ignore this. But if you're younger and you know how to do this, please, subscribe. What do we? What do we? Do you subscribe? I don't actually know how it works.
Yep.
Yeah, Chris is nodding his head. Subscribe, and then is there ability to like too?
Yeah, I'm one of those younger guys that you mentioned. So, yeah, if you if you've enjoyed this podcast,
He can't even say it with a straight face.
click like or subscribe. It will really help us out, won't it, Chris?
Okay, boomer.
Well, I don't think I've ever heard you laugh this hard at my expense. Anyway, and I forgot, Chris, I neglected to ask who is behind that underwhelming music that you played at the beginning, and you'll play it out for us.
That was Ustione by Joecoustic.
Ustione, Tony, by something acoustic. Yeah. Well, it was really, it had my head going a little bit, but you're going to play it out for us? Yeah. Thanks for being with us. I don't know why that's so funny. You said, if you're like one of those young people. I guess I did say I was one of those younger people. I'm like one of them. I know like and subscribe and all those really fancy high-tech things. Oh, here it is. I can't believe it's getting crisp like that. That is like almost not even sound.